Morning, gang. Hello, hello. Sorry I was a couple of seconds late. I was downloading the latest episode of TC After Dark. I lost track of time. Have you listened yet to all 3 of TC's episodes? Look out, Joe Rogan, is all I can say. Fabrizio. Hello, Sean. Eric. See who's in the house. Connie. Can always count on you, can't I, Connie? John K. Winfrey. And, of course, Jamal. And Nick. And Thomas. Korea. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. So, gang, I had a really interesting day yesterday. If you were tuned into my radio program, you know where I was headed in the afternoon. I said on a video that is probably posted right below that which you're watching now, imagine if I told you that there is a location in the United States with not one but 40 Confederate monuments. It's in the North, and thus far there has really not been debate about whether these statues should be left in place or taken down. There is such a place, and I visited it yesterday, Gettysburg. I found out last night that I was there as a kid. I have no recollection of it. I'm a little embarrassed that I'm 58 years old, consider myself to be fairly knowledgeable about both current events and history. It's a 2.5-hour drive from my home, and I haven't been there as an adult. But I went yesterday and took a CNN film crew with me. And this morning on CNN, we're going to run a pair of interviews that I did yesterday that I think will really spark an interesting conversation. These are black and white photos, but just to show you a little bit of what I saw. So here's the North Carolina State Monument. This is one you perhaps have seen before. This is Robert E. Lee. This is the Virginia Monument. The great state of Louisiana. Just show you one or two more. This is where I did the interview yesterday. This is Mississippi. And this is South Carolina. Now here's what's really interesting. Okay, so here is the South Carolina Confederate Monument adjacent to the battlefield in Gettysburg. When it was erected in 1963, one of the speakers, George Wallace. George Wallace. And so, you know, among the many issues here pertaining to the statuary, the memorials to Confederate troops at Gettysburg is that the Virginia statue, let me tell you exactly so that I don't get this wrong. The Virginia statue went up in 1917. In 1917, you had a significant number of individuals who fought at Gettysburg still alive. I see that in a separate light than South Carolina in 1963 or Louisiana in 1971. The latter have, to me, a bit of a thumb in your eye aspect to them, as compared to Virginia or as compared to North Carolina went up in 1929. By the way, same sculptor who did Mount Rushmore. It was such a learning experience yesterday, and I wasn't alone there. I was joined by Professor Scott Hancock, who is a professor of history and Africana studies at Gettysburg College, very knowledgeable, and also Jason Martz, who is the public affairs officer, that might not be his literal title, for the National Park Service at Gettysburg. And both men confirmed for me that there really hasn't been big debate thus far. I was drawn to this issue because a story ran in Penn Live that was written by, I just like to give credit as to whose work I'm relying on, Nolan Simmons. And it pointed out that, you know, perhaps there's no other location in America with this concentration of Confederate statues. And yet here in a battlefield context, there seems to be much more understanding as to their appropriateness. My survey question today asks whether Confederate battlefield monuments should be removed. And mine is a no vote with a caveat. Professor Hancock yesterday convinced me that where the Visitors Center at Gettysburg, which was redone in the last decade or so, is extraordinary and tells the full story as to why the Civil War was fought, his concern is that if you only visit the battlefield, and I highly recommend it, if there's one thing we ought to be able to agree on, it is don't make my mistake and wait so long to go there. But Professor Hancock's point was there needs to be more information provided in the field. More information provided about, you'd go to the South Carolina marker, you wouldn't know that George Wallace came. You wouldn't know that it really was designed to rebuff the growing civil rights movement. So my view is tell the story, but tell it in full. Tell the story, but tell it in full. And I see, and I wonder if you see, a distinction between a Confederate monument adjacent to the battlefield at what was the bloodiest battle of the Civil War, the turning point of the Civil War, 50,000 casualties. Casualties meaning death and injury. 165 or so thousand who fought there. If there's going to be a place where you recognize war dead, to me, it's there. But tell the full story. And I see it differently than putting up a Confederate monument 1,000 miles away outside a building where the nation's business gets done. So I'm so glad. It was a lot of driving yesterday for a package, as we put it in the business, that'll probably be, 6 minutes of tape long. But I think we got it done. And when you're finished watching this Facebook Live, look for on my YouTube page one thing that I created and something separate that is posted below here to get a feel for what I saw at Gettysburg. So I'm going to lead with that today. The president signed an executive order. He actually tweeted yesterday and he said, "I just had the privilege of signing a very strong executive order protecting American monuments, memorials, and statues and combating recent criminal violence, long prison terms for these lawless acts against our great country." So he sees it clearly as a wedge issue and something with which he can fuel his base. But I like the intellectual issue of put aside the town square. Let's talk about Gettysburg. I'm convinced, and not because I'm airing this on CNN, but I'm convinced that sooner or later the debate is going to end up there. Sooner or later they're gonna set their sights on Gettysburg, those who want them to come down, because my God, a concentration of 40 of them. The other thing is, some of these statues are gorgeous as pieces of art. I don't know that that's a justification in and of itself, but really something. Okay, so anyway, that's the lead of the show, and I'm very excited because it's very unique, and I've not seen anything else on television, a report from the field at Gettysburg. And it was also a beautiful day. It was a beautiful day to be there. Really tremendous. I need to read in. I need to be more knowledgeable about that chapter. On radio yesterday, when I opened up the telephone lines, every line was jammed with someone more knowledgeable than the next, or than the prior, I should say, about Gettysburg and the Civil War generally. It's one of these areas where people really are into it and have studied their history, and I have not. So I need to. All right. Chris Coons will also join me. Politico said this week that he is the Biden whisperer. He's tight with Joe. He has the Biden seat in the U.S. Senate. He's often been on my radio program, often in studio with me in Philly. I enjoy his company, and I think he's a very decent individual, and I welcome him coming back. I want to talk about two things with Chris Coons. One is national service. It's interesting. I played tape yesterday on radio of Ambassador Susan Rice telling me that she is for a mandatory national service program for young Americans. A week ago, Senator Coons introduced an effort to boost national service, and it drew co-sponsorship from Marco Rubio and Cory Booker. How often do you get Cory Booker and Marco Rubio agreeing on anything? But I also want to talk to him about the campaign and how it was a week ago. Remember, a week ago today was Tulsa. A week ago today, I noted on the program that the Trump campaign yearned for a split screen. They wanted the president surrounded by throngs in Tulsa, no masks, the economy's back. We are on the ascent. And Biden, to the Trump way of thinking, oh my God, he's in his basement, he's in a mask, he doesn't want to come out, doesn't want to make any gaffes. It's going well for Joe. Whether Biden's purpose is to protect his health and that of people around him, or to avoid the possibility for making a gaffe and just let Trump fight against Trump. Who knows? Maybe it's a combination of all of the above. But the way in which those tables have turned, and 76% of Americans told the New York Times that they always wear a mask or they usually wear a mask, and only 22% said they rarely wear a mask. Anyway, thrilled to have Chris Coons. Something else. David Scheimer is a Marshall Scholar at Oxford. He has just written a book, and it is terrific, and it answers the question of whether the United States has engaged. Well, you'll have to be the judge when you watch the package. When I was about to use the word similar, we have been involved in election hijinks. I'll use the word meddled in other nations' elections for 100 years. And I remember when discussing the Russian meddling in the 2016 election, there would be phone callers that I would take on POTUS who would say to me, oh, what about the United States? I didn't know what the United States record was. But by virtue of reading his new book, I know it now. And I have to say, it like my visit to Gettysburg, it was really an eye-opener. The title of the book, Rigged: America, Russia, and 100 Years of Covert Electoral Interference. The United States justification has been that we strengthen foreign democracies. The Russian justification has been we weaken foreign democracies. Is that enough of a rationalization? Do we have clean hands in the past? Nobody here, not the author David Scheimer, nor yours truly, is trying to explain away what Russia did in 2016. But it does put it in a very interesting light. When you think about the United States history in Italy, the United States history in Chile, the United States history with Slobodan Milosevic, the United States history during the course of the Cold War. I mean, we unleashed the CIA to try and alter the outcome, never by tinkering with the ballot box, but by trying to alter the outcome of elections through influencing people's thinking. So we will do that. How am I doing so far, by the way? A Gettysburg Field report, Senator Chris Coons, who is Joe Biden's closest friend in Washington, Election Meddling, a new book, doesn't hit till Tuesday, so nobody has seen this yet. And then, to boot, 28-time Emmy winner Bob Costas, who I asked to weigh in on the question of if the NBA and MLB are going to play in empty stadiums and arenas, will people want to watch at home? I don't know about you, but if I'm clicking through and there's a sporting event going on and there's nobody in the stands, I'm looking at you, Tampa Bay, when there's not a pandemic, it's hard for me to get enthused. So Bob Costas comes back to the program today, and then a happy ending for all, no pun intended. Remember the couple that is trapped in Ghana that I reported on 2 weeks ago? They through surrogacy, went to Ghana to bring home their baby. And then when the pandemic hit, a bunch of red tape kicked in and they couldn't get a passport for their newborn. They're coming home Monday. So I want to tell that story as well. Okay? That's a lot. That's a lot. But the Confederate battlefield issue is a real winner. a real winner and the subject of the survey question today. So, I recommend that you watch the package, watch the interviews that I did, and then go vote. But if you think you know enough about it now, then by all means, go and vote at Smerconish.com about that. Let's see what's going on. Michael, get over it. It's the new normal to have an empty stadia. Stadia? Maybe. I mean, it's going to be intriguing to watch. I watched golf. Doesn't matter to me if nobody else is there watching golf. When I watched Brady and Peyton and Phil and Tiger a couple of weeks ago. But golf's different. Like baseball. How about the NFL? I mean, what if the NFL comes back and there's nobody at Lincoln Financial Field? It's going to be different. Do you pipe in fake cheering and so forth? I think it really puts the onus on the broadcasters too, because they feed off the crowd. They feed off the crowd energy. Carrie Mills, leave the battlefields alone. Thomas DuVernay, going to bed in Korea. Not until the show's over. Hey, come on. John McCain wanted U.S. service. That's true. Mary Coyle says she'll watch it all. Nice shot at Tampa Bay. No, it's not what I mean. Julie says they need to be removed. Really, Julie? I mean, it's 23 of Robert E. 23,000 of Robert E. Lee's troops died, and this was put up in 1917, adjacent to the battlefield. If you said you want this to come down from your town square, I wish I could read the inscription, but this copy's not good enough. If you said to me, hey, I'm 1,000 miles away from Gettysburg, and this is in my town square, then we could have an interesting conversation. But in this position, he's positioned to look out over the battlefield where 23,000 men died. What do you do? And again, to be clear, no one today, there's not an orchestrated effort to tear this down. But I just think that there's an interesting question here as to where the line lies. I got to go get my noggin powdered and get ready to roll. Please be here at 9 a.m. to watch the CNN show. I'm really excited that the subjects I just laid out for you, 5 things that nobody else is doing from this perspective, maybe for good reason, you're thinking. I know. No, I think it's really unique content. We've really, really worked hard on today's show. So give us the payoff by tuning in, okay? 9 a.m. Have a wonderful day. Vote at Smerconish.com. Did I mention the podcast, TC After Dark? I see her just flying by there. She's got 3 great episodes, and she's off to a roaring start. So maybe during the course of this hour, you'll put in TC After Dark podcast and give her some play. All right. See you, gang.